Today I am going to tell you a little bit about why we celebrate Thanksgiving and the story behind it. You probably already know it has something to do with pilgrims and Indians, but there is more to the story. Are you ready to hear about it? Excellent! Let's begin. Over 100 years after Christopher Columbus arrived in the New World, a ship called the Mayflower landed along the shores of Massachusetts. Aboard the ship were people coming from England to start a new life in America. Some of the people were called saints, and others were called strangers. The saints were also called separatists because they were pilgrims on a religious journey. In England, the people had to worship the way the king told them to, but the saints wanted freedom to worship however they wanted to, so they separated from the church and sailed to America, where they could freely practice their religion. Not everyone who came to America came for religious reasons, however. The strangers boarded the Mayflower in hopes of traveling to a land where they could build better lives and become wealthy. Eventually, all the people who came from England were known as pilgrims, even though they had different reasons for leaving their country. Life in the New World was difficult at first. After a 66-day voyage, the saints and strangers had to face a long, hard winter in their new home. They called the place they lived Plymouth Colony, but there were no houses there for them to live in when they arrived. As they started to run out of food and supplies, they often took what they needed from the nearby Indian villages. Of course, the Indians did not like this and fought with the pilgrims to protect their property. But without the help of the native people who knew how to live in this new land, the English settlers might not have survived. One day, an Indian named Samoset came into Plymouth Colony. The pilgrims were frightened until they heard Samoset say, "Welcome," in English, which he had learned earlier from English fishermen. He came in peace and told them about the Wampanoag tribe. The next day, Samoset came back with other Wampanoag Indians. They brought pelts of fur as gifts for the settlers. They wanted to show the pilgrims they were friends and not enemies. After struggling through the long, hard winter, the pilgrims were happy to have the Wampanoag Indians there to teach them how to survive in the New World. One of the Indians who came to Plymouth Colony with Samoset was Squanto. He spoke English also because he had spent time as a slave in England. Squanto was able to escape, but after a long voyage home, he was sad to find out the people of his Patuxet tribe had all died. Samoset and the other Wampanoag Indians welcomed him into their village. Squanto spent much time with the pilgrims. He taught them how to track and hunt animals. He also taught them new ways to fish and showed them how he could catch eels with his feet. Do you think you could catch fish with your feet? Some of the plants and berries in the New World were not safe to eat. Squanto showed the pilgrims which ones would not make them sick. He also taught them how to use certain plants and herbs as medicines. In the spring, Squanto brought seeds for the pilgrims to plant. He helped them plant crops of corn, peas, beans, and squash. Squanto was different from the English settlers. His skin was darker, and he even dressed differently. But he showed that differences don't prevent people from being friends and helping each other. One day, Massasoit, the leader of the Wampanoag tribe, met with William Bradford, the governor of Plymouth Colony. The two leaders signed a peace treaty. they would help each other if either of their villages or settlements were under attack. Following a good summer with a plentiful harvest, Governor Bradford decided to celebrate with a feast. He invited his Indian friends to join the Pilgrims. 140 people gathered around long tables outside in Plymouth Colony for a celebration that lasted 3 days. The Wampanoag Indians brought plenty of food to share, including 5 deer. This feast of celebration with the Pilgrims and Indians was probably held sometime in October of 1621, although no one knows for sure. The men, women, and children ate wild turkeys, geese, partridges, ducks, fish, and other kinds of seafood, in addition to the deer the Indians brought. The harvest of fruit and vegetables was bountiful, and the plates were filled with pumpkins and other kinds of squash, cranberries, corn, peas, and beans. It was a wonderful banquet, complete with outdoor games. The Pilgrims showed off their skills by shooting at targets with their muskets, and the Indians matched them by hitting the same targets using their bows and arrows. The children enjoyed foot races and stool ball, a game similar to cricket that their families played in England. There was much laughter and fun at this harvest celebration. Children and unmarried young people served the food and cleared the tables. The Pilgrims and Wampanoag Indians did not have silverware and ate with their hands from wooden plates called trenchers. This was also a time for being thankful, although the first real Thanksgiving was not celebrated until July 1623, nearly 2 years later. After surviving a long drought that almost destroyed all their crops, the Pilgrims spent a day in church thanking God for his provision. A day set apart for Thanksgiving was a spiritual celebration and not a feast. It wasn't until 1841 that the harvest celebration of 1621 was referred to as the first Thanksgiving. We still think of Pilgrims and Indians sharing a banquet when we think of Thanksgiving, however. Pilgrims, Indians, and turkeys, of course. On December 18, 1777, the Continental Congress of the United States of America declared the first National Day of Thanksgiving. On November 26, 1789, George Washington announced it was a National Day of Thanksgiving and Prayer. Later, Abraham Lincoln designated the last Thursday of November as Thanksgiving Day. In 1939, however, President Franklin D. Roosevelt changed it to the fourth Thursday of November, which was officially approved in 1941 as a national holiday. Today, we still celebrate Thanksgiving Day on the fourth Thursday of November. Families and friends gather to share feasts, which often include roast turkey and stuffing, mashed potatoes, corn, carrots, buttered rolls, cranberry sauce, and of course, pumpkin pie. Which part of the Thanksgiving feast is your favorite? When the Pilgrims arrived in America, life was not easy. Today, we can go into our kitchens, open our refrigerators, and take out something yummy to eat. But it wasn't always that way. The Pilgrims were thankful because they never took blessings, like having food or shelter, for granted. And on Thanksgiving Day, neither should we. What are you thankful for? This was a presentation by the American History Edition of iStoryBooks. American History Edition is a growing collection of interactive books about American history. Download iStoryBooks American History Edition from the App Market and have fun learning more about American history.